This video is sponsored by Noragon, the commercial vehicle data experts. Visit noragon.com to learn more.
Whoa. What's going on here? Oh, that's the visualization I enabled when bidirectional testing. Isn't it cool? Bidirectional testing. So you're sending test commands from the laptop to the truck, right? Correct. And each time you see me multiply and then reset, I've completed a bidirectional test to troubleshoot a fault code. Wow, okay, on the same truck? No, each time I multiply, I'm testing a new truck. Wow, that's a lot of trucks. Yep, and being able to isolate components and work down our troubleshooting process has increased our shop's throughput a ton. Here, take a look. Using bidirectional testing, we can select the components, see what tests are available, check out the descriptions for those tests, and then send the command from here. Okay, but is there a chance of me messing something up on the truck by doing this test from here? Well, in this case, Noragon's J-Pro has protections baked in, so it's unlikely that you or any of the technicians will impact the truck negatively by running a bidirectional test. But you don't have to take my word for it. Here's Jason Hedman, Noragon's J-Pro product manager, with more details on why bidirectional testing is important.
You know, one of the things in the industry that I talk about from time to time is the fact that everybody's got their own brand, right? So we try to use the same terminology all the time. And when we can't use the same terminology, we try to build features into our software that explain the different terminologies that each OE uses in how they describe their products or their tests. So one of the things that's, strikes a chord in me is the fact that, depending on the OE or the service tool, they call what we call bidirectional tests by different names. I have gone to calling them bidirectional capabilities, right? So anytime you do a bidirectional test, you're sending a command to a vehicle and it does something, right? So one of the components actually does something physically or runs a test. And there's two types of those tests. There's automated tests. A lot of that comes from the light duty world. Those ECUs can do self-tests, right? Key on demand self-tests, key on engine running tests. They're all self-tests. They're on the ECU. It's automated. Then there's, the other types of tests where you actually send a command like a cylinder cutout to cut out a cylinder, and you're actually doing something to look at what's going on. And then there's stuff that lots of people refer to as tests that are really just changing parameters, right? So it's not really a test, but it gets lumped together. So I lump them all together under bidirectional capabilities. I send a command to change the road speed to 70 miles an hour, and it changes the road speed. So that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about. One of the other things is the question that you really had asked to begin with was when it comes to the bidirectional test, what are best practices? And that one again has been. We've talked about it before in quite a few white papers, in documentation, in our software, in videos that we've done. Is, there's a lot of people out there running regens. It is by far and away the most commonly ran bidirectional test out there and I know that's within J-Pro, and I got to say that I'm pretty sure that's within any other software that can run a bidirectional test. That is the most used bidirectional test. Everybody runs it for everything. If it comes into the shop, do it. And the problem with that is it's a waste of fuel, time, and money. And that's all, time and money, right? The important things in all the truck shops is saving time and money. And how do we get there? Well, we're not running regens every time you touch a truck when it's not necessarily is one of those ways to save money. But there's also, other best practices besides not just blindly running regens, right? So you want to read the dialogues that are in the tests. Any test, any software that's worth its salt is going to have some form of direction about what you're doing with that software in that test, or changing a parameter. It's going to tell you step by step, explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, right? So read the dialogues. They do mean something. Sometimes it's a lot of words, but if you take the time to read it, maybe you're doing the wrong thing, and you'll stop doing that. Know what the tests are for. I talk about cave poking quite a bit around the shop. When I say shop, I mean it in Oregon. And cave poking is you just blindly doing something in the software. It goes back to using a test light to poke into the wires, right? That's a bad practice in itself. And cave poking with the software is the virtual extension of that. If I'm doing a cylinder cutout for an injector misfire, let's say I start by, instead of doing the cylinder cutout, I just go and do an injector reset. An injector reset can reset all of the injectors at once. And maybe that sounds like a good idea at first, but if you haven't done the injector cutout first to figure out and validate your code that you may have that says cylinder misfire, injector number 4 or whatever, if you've done nothing to validate that, you may not have solved the problem by doing an injector reset. It may not apply to that injector at all. You may have to send a trim code to that injector. I don't know the situation, but if you're paying attention to the dialogues and you're number 3, using troubleshooting information to get to the point that I'm speaking of, you've got there logically, right? Follow the steps in that troubleshooting information. I think probably one of the biggest issues in the industry is people tend to skip steps. Not always on purpose. Let's say you got a guy started working on something on first shift, and he got so far into the process, and then a guy on second shift comes in and takes over the process, and he took for granted that A, B, and C were checked during the troubleshooting steps. So he's off doing C, D, and E, right? Thinking that A, B, and C were done correctly or at all, and something got skipped. So making sure you follow the process in that troubleshooting repair information. So if you don't have a tool that has troubleshooting and repair information in it, definitely need to get it. And then it also has to have that troubleshooting information and bidirectional tests for that troubleshooting information and steps so that you can actuate that.
Well, that's all great when the truck's in the shop, but I've learned a thing or two this year. Can we do this remotely? I like where your head's at. We can access our trucks remotely, but the features and service abilities that we have can differ based on what we have in the shop. It's worth talking about, however, and we will do that on the next episode. Thanks for watching.